Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Veguilla-Lezan. If you are new here, I am a freelance graphic designer and illustrator based out of the Midwest in the Chicagoland area. So on my channel, you'll find all kinds of things related to creative business, entrepreneurship, and design related tutorials. Today we are going to be doing another tutorial based on the Procreate app on the iPad. I learned a fun thing that I want to share with you guys. I know there's other tutorials out there kind of similar to this, but I wanted to highlight some other ways that we can utilize this function. So we're going to be creating Procreate brushes, specifically stamp brushes that you can utilize either for drawing, illustration, or even surface pattern design if that's something that you do. So let's get started. Alright, so to start with, we are going to be making 3 different brushes: a stamp brush, a pattern brush, and a texture brush. We're going to start with the stamp brush. So first, let's launch Procreate. And in order to create brushes, what we want to make sure we do is create on a square canvas in the biggest size that we can to make sure we have no issues with things like pixelation or warping. So we are going to set up our first canvas by going to the upper right hand corner of Procreate, and we're going to hit the little plus icon. And we are going to then select the icon that looks like a gray rectangle with a plus in it, and then we are going to update our measurements here from pixels to inches, and we are going to create a square canvas that is 10 inches by 10 inches at 300 dpi, and then we're going to select create. Once we've created the canvas, this is what it'll look like. And the idea of the stamp brush is so that, say you're creating the same kind of element over and over again, you can just tap using your Apple Pencil or your stylus to get that element down. So it's great for things like watermarks or when you're creating designs or illustrations, and it's something that you're utilizing often. So I like to make a stamp brush for that. So what we're going to do is utilize our regular brushes to actually sketch out the stamp brush, and then we'll create a brush. So the first thing we want to do is go into our brushes library, and then I'm just going to go down to my calligraphy brushes, and I'm going to select monoline. And then I'm going to go into my colors palette, and if you don't have the classic on, maybe you have like the disc on, just select classic, and then you can drag all of your color options to the left and it'll give you a pure black. And then we can basically just draw whatever it is that we want to draw. So I'm just going to draw kind of like a cute heart shape. And then I'm going to drag my color and fill it in. And then I'm just going to zhuzh this up a little bit and add some additional elements outside of it, just so that it's interesting to look at. And you can make this as big or as small. I like to fill up the whole canvas if I can when I am doing this. So I'm actually going to select this and just increase it a bit in size. And to do that, you just have to select your arrow tool, click on the element, and then drag your corners out to fill in the space. I'm going to go in and clean up any areas that may look a little out of place or like an error. Once I'm done with this, now we can begin setting up the brush. So you can add whatever you want in terms of detail. I just wanted to keep this simple just so I can show you the effect and how to apply it. So once we're done with the heart drawing, what we need to do is export this as a JPEG. So we'll go to the upper left hand side of our screen. Right next to where it says gallery, you'll see a little wrench icon. We're going to click on that and we're going to select share. Once we've selected share, we're going to then go down to JPEG, and we're going to export this by just saving image, and it's going to save it into our camera roll. Once we've done that, now we can go into our brushes. So what we want to do is on the left hand side of our brush pop-up, we want to scroll down to our brush library, and where you see that little blue button with a plus sign, we want to click on that. We're basically creating a new library, and the whole purpose of this is to help keep all of our brushes that we're creating in one space so that they're easy to find. And we're going to edit the untitled set name by selecting it and hitting rename, and then clicking on our little keyboard option here, And then we're just going to name this tutorial set 3. You can name it whatever you want. I just have 3 sets that I was working on. So you can name it tutorial set 1, or you can just name it whatever it is that you're working on, or whatever it is that you choose. Once you're done, hit return, and then making sure that that library is selected, and you'll know it's selected because the little stroke will be in blue. We're going to move to the right side, right beside where it says brush library, there's another plus. We're going to hit that icon, and this takes us to the area where we are able to create our brushes. So this is the brush studio. What we're going to focus on right now is shape. What we want to do is update the shape source. So we're going to select edit, and we're going to select import, and we're going to import a photo, and it should be the first option in your library because that is what you most recently exported. Once it's imported, then you want to take 2 fingers and tap on the image and invert your colors, and then select done. So now if you look on our drawing pad, this doesn't really look like a stamper. So essentially the idea is that we want to tap our pen once and get that heart once, and not have it kind of all in one line. So what we're going to do is we're going to clear our drawing pad, and I'm just going to make a line so you can see this as we work in progress. We're going to keep everything in shape source the same. So what we want to go to first is stroke path, and what we need to do is update our fall off and our spacing. So what we want to do is take our stylus and drag fall off all the way to max. That will allow us to only create 1 when we tap, and then we're going to increase our spacing to max as well. And then if you notice, the opacity is kind of a bit messed up. We want it to be a dark color every single time. So we need to go down to where it says Apple Pencil, those options, and we need to adjust our opacity from max to none. And this will ensure that it's the same uniform color every single time. We want to keep our size the same because we don't want pressure sensitivity or anything like that to increase or decrease the size, because again, we want it to be uniform. And then we are going to go into properties, and we're going to adjust the brush behavior. So we want to adjust the max size as big as you would like it to be. I'm going to bring it up quite large so that we can get really big options out of this. I'm going to bring in my minimum size and increase that just a bit. And then I'm going to click use stamp preview because it's just going to be a stamp image that we want to see so that we know what it looks like when we see it in the preview option. And then I'm going to tap into my drawing pad, and I'm going to increase the size, and then I'm just going to tap it in so we can see what it looks like. And that's what the final brush will look like. So all of our focus has been only on brush properties, Apple Pencil, shape, and stroke path. So now that we've updated all of these settings, we want to go into the About This brush, and we can name the brush by tapping into where it says Untitled Brush, hit your keyboard, and we are going to name this Stamp Brush 1. We're going to assign our name, and then where it says Made By, we're going to tap into there, and then it'll give us our keyboard, and we can update it to our name. And then we want to select Create New Reset Point so that if we ever edit or revise this brush and we forget to make a copy of it or something, we could always reset it so that it was at its original settings. And then we're going to select Done. So now what we want to do is go out and test this. So we are going to go back out into our gallery. We're going to select the plus icon on the right hand side, and we're just going to select an 8.5 by 11 paper, and we are going to test this brush. We're going to go into tutorial set 3. Again, if you're noticing that this brush looks like you don't see the preview, you can go into properties and just turn off use stamp preview because this is a larger one, so it's only going to show part of it. So you can clear your drawing pad, and then you can just tap in and then hit done again. And then you can also adjust the preview size and then hit done in your preview. So making sure that stamp brush is selected. We're going to go in, and you can update the color, whatever you want it to be. I'm going to use this red so you can see it easily. And then I'm just going to adjust my size here. And then I can stamp throughout the screen, and it gives me a nice consistent stamp. So this is just a fun tool that you can utilize to kind of streamline your process for surface pattern design, for illustration, or even if you're a digital planner and you like planning on your iPad using Procreate or GoodNotes and things like that. This is a great way to create digital stickers that are fast and simple to utilize. All right, so now the next brush we want to work on is a pattern brush. So we're going to go back out into our gallery. And the nice thing is once you've set up your canvas once, you can just replicate it. So what we're going to do is that original artwork that we created with the heart, we're going to select where it says Untitled, and we're going to name this Stamp Brush 1. We can just swipe left on that file and select duplicate, and it'll duplicate it. And we're just going to select where it says Stamp Brush 1, and we're going to rename this to be Pattern Brush 2, and then hit done. And we're going to select that so that it opens up. We're going to go into our layers and we're going to clear them. So we're going to select layer 1, we're going to swipe to the left, and we're just going to select clear. So what we're going to do now is create a pattern brush. So essentially the idea of this pattern brush is just like what you would normally see in surface pattern design. We want to create a seamless repeat. So it'll be important that whatever it is we're creating hits all 4 sides. And this isn't the best way to create a repeat, but it's a fast way to do it with this type of process. And this works best with really simple shapes and things like that, shapes and line forms. And in order to do this appropriately, what we're going to be utilizing is the symmetry tool. So what we want to go and click on is that wrench tool again, and we're going to go to canvas. And what we want to do is turn on the drawing guide. And then we want to select Edit Drawing Guide. And what we're going to do is select Symmetry, and then we want to click on the options for our symmetry, and we want to select Quadrant. And then we want to make sure also that Assisted Drawing is turned on. And then we can also adjust the color of our quadrant just so that it's easier to see. I'm going to select like a red color, and then you can also adjust the opacity and the thickness by just dragging over these marker areas here. So I'm just going to increase the thickness just so that it's easy for me to see what I'm doing, and increase the opacity. And then I'm going to select Done. So with this, what's nice is whatever you do in one quadrant is going to happen in another. So this is a great tool to use for things like surface pattern design. Whatever you do to one side will basically be replicated on the other, and you're utilizing basically kind of like a mirroring technique. So what we're going to do basically is just utilize these quadrants to create the shapes that we want to create, or to create a pattern. And like I said, we want to make sure that we have these shapes hitting the top and the sides and the bottom in order for it to create the seamless repeat in the brush settings. So I'm going to go into my brush settings. I'm just going to use a monoline brush for this for now, and making sure that I'm utilizing a pure black in my color settings here. Then I'm just going to start creating shapes. So what I'm thinking for this pattern is to kind of create like a lace kind of feel. And if you've ever used like a spirograph, that's kind of how this feels when you're utilizing this specific tool. So I'm just going to start at the top and meet at the center and just create these shapes as I go. And then, like I said, I want to make sure I touch the top as you see here, and I touch the bottom, and then I want to also touch the sides. Once I'm done and I have a design that I like, I can go in and start filling in areas just to create some more interest in the overall layout. All right, I think I like how this looks. Now that I'm done with this, just like before, we need to go to our wrench icon and select Export. So select the red icon, making sure share is selected. We're going to go down to share image and select JPEG. And then we're just going to save image, and it'll save to our camera roll. And now we can begin the process of setting up our brush. So we're going to select the brush icon, and we're going to go up to our brush library, tutorial set 3, and then we're going to select the plus. And this time, instead of working with the shape, we are going to work with the grain. So if we click on shape, we're just going to keep the generic circle shape for our shape source, and then we're going to select grain, and we want to select edit, and we're going to import. And we're going to import a photo, and it'll be our most recent design that we've saved. And then we want to use 2 fingers, tap on the image to invert it, and then hit done. And now we can see this is already kind of starting to take place. But you'll notice that if you're coloring over this, it doesn't fully create the effect that we're going for. What we want to do is clear our drawing pad, and we're going to select texturize. And basically this allows us to fill in the space very easily. So because this is so large right now, we need to decrease the size. So I'm going to pull this down to about 10%, and you can begin to see the seamless repeat in the preview. So you could just keep this as is. You don't have to change much. You might want to go in and adjust your scale, but then you also might want to go into your properties and adjust how big the maximum size is and how big the smallest size is. So you can just adjust. You may want to also adjust your opacity. So you want to make sure that your opacity for this one is max and there is no minimum opacity. And then we don't want to use a stamp preview. We want to see how the print looks in a stroke. So we're going to keep stamp preview off. And then we'll want to go down to the About This brush and update our settings. And then create new reset point. So just in case something happens with your brush, if you reset it, it'll bring it back to its original settings. And then we'll hit done. So now what we want to do is test this. So let's go back out into our gallery. Go into our untitled artwork that we did the hearts in. We're just going to go into our layers panel and select new layer. We'll go to layer 1 and uncheck mark it so it turns it off, and then making sure we're on layer 2, we can test out this brush. So we'll go into our brush tool, make sure that that brush is selected, and we'll go into our color options, and we can change the color here so it's something easy to see. And then we will go onto our artboard, and we can fill this in, and then you see it creates this nice repeat. And what's nice is that you could also utilize this to kind of create clipping masks for certain elements. Say you're working on a drawing and you drew a jacket and you filled it in with color, and you want to add a pattern to it. You can utilize the clipping mask functions here in Procreate to do that. So what I'm going to do is create a new layer on top of this pattern layer, and I'm just going to draw a simple shape using just a regular, using that monoline in my calligraphy brush library, using a regular monoline brush. I'm going to update the color to something that's easy to see, so I'm going to use black. I'm just going to create a triangle here, and then I'm going to fill it, making sure it's filled completely. And I'm going to make it almost like it's a bag, just so you can see really quickly what this would look like if we create a clipping mask with it. Once we've created that shape, what we want to do is take that layer and drag it so that it's underneath the actual pattern. And then we're going to go back to the pattern layer, and we're going to select the image area, and we are going to go down to where it says clipping mask, and we're going to tap that, and it'll clip into the shape of this little purse that we've created. So you have a lot of tools that you can utilize to make work easier while you're working in Procreate. So like the quadrant technique is really helpful, and then again utilizing something like a brush to fill something really quickly with a pattern. Now let's move on to our third and final brush. We're going to go back out into gallery, and we are going to duplicate pattern brush 2, and we're going to click on it and rename the text to say texture brush 3. And then hit done. And then we're going to click on it and launch it. And then what we want to do is clear the layer. So we're going to go into our layers functions, swipe left to clear them. And then we're going to go into our wrench icon again, and we're going to go to canvas. We're going to go into edit our drawing guide, and we're going to turn off assisted drawing, and we're going to select done. And then we're going to go back into our wrench icon, and we're going to turn off drawing guide. And we're not necessarily going to make any type of texture. We could if we wanted, using some of the already pre-made textures here. But what I wanted to do was just create a new texture. So you could utilize textures off the internet. What I prefer though is taking photos of my own textures, especially if you're going to sell these or utilize them in any commercial artwork. You want to make sure that you don't have any issues with copyright. What we're going to do is solely be utilizing some imagery to create the actual texture. So before we even jump into creating the brush, what we need to do is launch a new program, which is called Snapseed. So I'm going to scroll to my app, and I'm going to launch Snapseed. And once you've launched this app, you can just tap anywhere to open a photo. And I'm going to go to select more photos. I'm going to select the photo that I shared to my iPad and hit done. And then we want to select open from device. And I'm going to find that photo in my camera roll, and it's going to open it up for me. So the first thing I want to do, because in this lower left hand side here, there's I wasn't fully aligned, so we need to crop this. So what we're going to do is on the right hand side, you will see like a rainbow, a pencil, and an arrow tool. We're going to select the pencil tool, and we're going to select crop. So what I want to do is crop by dragging up so that I don't have any of that additional black space that I don't need. You'll see the crop lines are in your corner, and all you have to do is take your Apple Pencil or your finger and just adjust where these crop lines are, and then hit the little check mark and it'll crop it for you. Then what you want to do is go back to that pencil icon, and we're going to select Tune Image, and basically we want to create a very contrasty feeling when it comes to this image so that it has really clear blacks and really clear whites in terms of the colors within the imagery. And this is what will help to create the texture within the brush that we're going to be working on. So we're going to select Adjust, and we're going to go down to Contrast first. And what's nice is all you have to do is drag your Apple Pencil over to adjust the contrast and make all of these adjustments. So we want to drag our contrast all the way to the right to 100, and then we'll go back to Adjust, and we're going to go into Highlights, and we are going to adjust those and bring them down. You can bring it all the way down to 100 if you like, but it seems like it's too dark. That's fine. It just kind of eyeball it, see what works and what looks best for you. I just want to really be able to see the texture within this grain. We'll go back to Adjust, and now we want to go to Shadows, and we'll want to bring the shadows down. And again, eyeball this, see what works best for your particular image. And I think that is it for these. So we just want to really look at contrast, highlights, and shadows, and then you can hit the little check mark. And then what we want to do is now select the icon with the arrow so we can share this file. So we're going to hit save, and it's going to save it to your photo roll. You can just say allow Snapseed to modify this photo, and then we can exit out of this app, and then we can go back into Procreate. Once we're back into Procreate, what we want to do is go into the brush tools again. So we're going to select our brush library. We're going to go into tutorial set 3, and then we're going to select the little plus icon. And what we want to be working with is both the shape and the grain this time. So we're going to go into shape, and I'm going to select edit, and I'm going to select import. And instead of importing a photo or a file, we're going to tap source library. Procreate has a fantastic variety of different shape and grain sources that you can play around to create your own unique brushes. You don't have to just utilize, outside imagery and things like that. That's a really great way to go about doing this, like creating your own textures and then scanning them in and then utilizing the shape sources as we're doing now. But you can also utilize the grain sources, and they have all kinds of texture elements that you can pull in as well. So for our shape source, we are going to utilize this blotch shape, and then we're going to select done. And then we want to go into grain, and we are going to edit our grain, and we're going to import it. And this time, of course, we're going to import a photo, and it should be the most recent swatch that we created. And then we're going to select done. So you already start to see the grain in the preview, but we're going to play around with this a bit more just so we can see what the options are for this. So I'm going to create a line just so we can see what this looks like. We can adjust in our grain behavior the size in terms of our scale. You can adjust how zoomed in this would be or how zoomed out. You can adjust your depth jitter, things like that. We can also go up to stroke path and adjust our spacing. We can adjust streamline. We can adjust jitter if we want something of more of like a fuzzy looking shape when it comes to that line. That's exactly what I'm looking for. And we want to keep fall off to none. We can also go down to dynamics, and we can adjust how, depending on how fast or slow we're drawing, it can increase or decrease the size. And same thing with the opacity. We can also adjust the size of our jitter and the opacity of the jitter as well. If we go into Apple Pencil, again, we can adjust the size of this based on pressure sensitivity. And you can adjust things like the tilt, the bleed, the size based on the tilt of your pencil, things like that, size compression. I'm going to keep all of those the same. I really just want to focus on that stroke path, the options under grain in terms of zoom, scale, movement, the options under Apple Pencil. We just want to make sure that we're at full capacity. And then we'll go into properties. We want to make sure use stamp preview is off. And then we can adjust our brush size. So we can adjust how big the brush can be and how small it is. This size is nice, and it gives us a nice kind of like wood gradient effect here. You can also adjust the opacity and the max opacity and the minimum opacity. And then the last thing we want to do is just go back into grain and just double check. We want to make sure that we don't have moving selected, but we have texturized selected, because it'll give us a nice clean grain effect that isn't warped when we color over it or when we color over our strokes. Once we're all done with all of that, we can go into the About This brush and rename our brush. And then remember, create new reset point, hit save, and then select done. And now we've created our third and final brush, so let's test it out. Let's update the color. I think I'm going to use kind of like a brown color here just to play around with like the wood effect. And then I'm just going to fill in. And then what's nice is that, again, just like what we did with the kind of like lace texture that we created with that repeat pattern, we can utilize things like clipping masks to create, again, to combine shapes and these textures together. So I'm just going to go in and create a new layer. I'm going to go into my layers panel, select plus, create a new layer. And then I'm just going to go in and select black so it's easy to see, and I'm going to create a new shape. I'm going to then go into my brush library and select a monoline brush from my calligraphy options just so that I have a nice clean line. And then I'm just going to create a shape here so we can test this out. Once I've created my shape, I'm going to drag in the color, and then I'm going to go and select that layer, drag it underneath the texture, and then I'm going to click on that texture, and I'm going to select clipping mask, and it will mask it to below. And you can adjust the clipping mask as well. You now have a wood texture, and you can almost like utilize this again if you're working on an illustration. Maybe you want to have a wood siding or a wooden table, and instead of drawing the wood, you can utilize something like a texture to add that, and then mask it to your shape and add your additional layers for things like shadows. So it's just an easy and quick way to streamline your work process. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. It is a fun and really simple technique that you can utilize on Procreate. I really love this app. I think it's such a fantastic and fabulous kind of work on the go tool that you can utilize, especially if you're a graphic designer and illustrator. There are people who are doing amazing things with Procreate, and as I dive deeper into the software, I learn more and more, and hopefully in the future I'll be able to bring some more tutorials like this to you all. If you like what you see, make sure you leave a like, and if you really want to keep up with what I'm doing here, learn more about the tutorials and about the work that I do when it comes to like my vlogs, definitely hit the subscribe button. I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.